The Twitter Files, Part 3. The Removal of Donald Trump, Part 1. October 2020 to January 6, the date that he was nuked from Twitter. Taibbi shares, he says, the world knows much of the story of what happened between riots at the Capitol on January 6 and the removal of Trump from Twitter on January 8th. But we're going to show you what hasn't yet been revealed. The erosion of standards within the company in the months before J6. Decisions by high-ranking executives to violate their own policies and more against the backdrop of ongoing documented interaction with federal agencies. And we know that is also taking place in a parallel case. We've covered the state of Missouri, the state of Louisiana. They're suing the Biden administration. They've got depositions completed already with Anthony Fauci. They've got another one done with Elvis Chan, FBI agent who was stationed in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, directly interfacing with these companies. The first installment covers the period before the election through J6. But tomorrow, Shellenberger Michael is going to be detailing the chaos inside of Twitter on January 6. So we're scoped out here only on the pre-J6 events. On Sunday, Bari Weiss will reveal the secret internal communications from the key date of January 8th. Oh my gosh. It's going to be a 3-day extravaganza. It's going to be a bonanza. The first installment today, J6. Tomorrow on Saturday, January 7th, and on Sunday, January 8th. Is it Christmas already? Did Christmas get here early? Matt Taibbi continues. He says, whatever your opinion on the decision to remove Trump that day, the internal communications at Twitter between J6 and J8 have clear historical import. Even Twitter's employees understood in that moment that it was a landmark moment in the annals of speech. At 16:26:48 on January 6, one Twitter employee said, "Is this the first sitting head of state to ever be suspended?" Yeah, I mean, there were all sorts of other literal dictators who were left on Twitter. But because Trump said the word fight and he had questions about an election, he was the worst person on the entire platform who was a head of state, and he was removed. Yeah, it was. Taibbi says, as soon as they finished banning Trump, Twitter executives started processing new power. They prepared to ban future presidents and White Houses, and perhaps even Joe Biden. The new administration, in quotes, says one exec, will not be suspended by Twitter unless absolutely necessary. They love the power that they've now grabbed. They posted this internally in Twitter at 18:13:10. They say, as stated in our ban evasion policy, if it is clear that another account is being used for the purposes of evading a ban, it is also subject to suspension. For the government accounts such as POTUS and the White House, we will not suspend those accounts, but we will take action to limit their use. However, these accounts will be transitioned over to the new administration in due course and will not be suspended by Twitter unless absolutely necessary to alleviate real world harm. Right there. As stated, we'll do what we can to alleviate real world harm. Yeah, and Locals is noting that there's no timestamp, and there's a timestamp, but not a date stamp on these. So I'm presuming that these are all coming out on the 6th still, provided that Taibbi is staying accurate. Tomorrow, Shellenberger will talk about the 7th. On Sunday, Weiss will talk about the 8th. So I'm presuming that maybe these are messages that were coming in on the 6th, and everybody's exchanging viewpoints. But we could be wrong. Taibbi continues, he says, Twitter executives removed Trump in part over what one executive called, quote, the context surrounding the actions. Actions by Trump and supporters, quote, over the course of the election and frankly, the last 4 years. This guy's super agitated. People are having a conversation. Should we ban Trump? And he says, well, yeah, it's not just about this. It's also about all of the pain we had to endure this entire administration. In the end, they looked at the broad picture, but that approach can cut both ways. Internally, somebody sends a message to Vijaya. It says, hi, Vijaya. I'm working with so-and-so, another censor on my team, to put together a doc to share with you and to share with you a point of view from research, ours, academics with whom we've been working with, etc., on Donald Trump's language as coded incitement to further violence. You can see that they posted that on Twitter. And I have to restore my screen so it's better there. The response after Vijaya receives that message is as follows. Actually, this is a second message. So they say that Donald Trump's language as coded is incitement to further violence. In the meantime, here's our quick take. The decision on whether to pull that particular tweet or to use that as a last straw for Trump depends on many factors, including 1, the overall context and the narrative in which that tweet lives. We currently analyze tweets and consider them at a tweet-by-tweet basis, which does not appropriately take into account the context surrounding. You can use the yelling fire into a crowded theater example. Context matters, and the narrative that Trump and his friends have pursued over the course of this election, and frankly, the last 4 years, must be taken into account when interpreting and analyzing that tweet. And 2, the larger question is around our moral imperative and decision as a company, which user sentiment should not drive based on number 1. Some other censor loser and I believe his tweet does violate our rules when taking that historical context plus current climate into account. So they're very upset about this. They're like, man, we've been abused by this guy. Man, he's been tweeting for 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. We can't take it anymore. This is enough. And so they've got a research, academics, and they say Trump's language is coded incitement to further violence. Okay. Taibbi continues. He writes, the bulk of the internal debate leading to Trump's ban took place in those 3 January days. However, the intellectual framework was laid in the months preceding the Capitol riots. Before J6, Twitter was a unique mix of automated rules-based enforcement and more subjective moderation by senior executives. As Barry Weiss reported previously, which we just read through, the firm had a vast array of tools for manipulating visibility, including shadow banning, including do not amplifies, including do not trends, and so on. Most of which were already thrown at Trump and others pre-J6. But as the election approached, senior executive, perhaps under pressure from federal agencies, with whom they met as time progressed, increasingly struggled with rules and began to speak of VIOS as a pretext to do what they likely would have done anyways. Meeting with federal agencies, perhaps under pressure. Perhaps is the word. Don't have any direct evidence from Matt on that one. But we do know that Elvis Chan was meeting with the senior executives at tech companies in Silicon Valley. Taibbi continues. After January 6, internal Slack show Twitter executives getting a kick out of intensified relationships with the feds. Here's a clip from Trust and Safety, the head of them called Yoel, lamenting a lack of, quote, generic enough calendar descriptions to conceal his, quote, very interesting meeting partners. Okay, so Yoel, the guy who would just love to see all of the new enforcement mechanisms brought into his toolkit, he's on Slack, internal company message. Yoel says, it happens. I'm a big believer in calendar transparency. Somebody must have missed a meeting or something. But I reached a certain point where my meetings became very interesting, he says, to people, and there weren't enough meeting names generic enough to cover them. Anyway, let me know. Probably has to reschedule or something. Right. So that's probably what it was. Yoel gets a message. Hey, Yoel, love to meet with you about censoring a bunch of conservatives. Want to see if you're available on Wednesday. Are you there? He says, as you can see, I'm blocked out on that day. And the person responds, I saw you were blocked out, but it says, I can't see what it is. It says sort of like non-defined. So I just wanted to make sure that you were actually not available. And he says, yeah, I put it on there. And he says, oh, I'm sorry for the mistake. He says, it happens. And I'm a big believer in transparency, and that's why, I put him on there. But I can't put the name on there, just so you know. I'm very important. I have very interesting meetings with the FBI. And the person responds and says, oh, yeah, a very boring business meeting that is definitely not about Trump. Winky face. Literal winky face. Yoel says, pretty much, with a lot of extra E's in there, right? Very Yoel Roth-y. And Yoel says, quote, definitely not meeting with the FBI, I swear. Okay? So he's like literally meeting with the FBI, saying that he's not meeting with the FBI. All right. So the person responds, LMAO. They're talking in secret coded language, but it's not secret coded language. Okay. It's like a couple of high school girls. It's hilarious. All right. So, all right. That's what's going on inside of Twitter. Okay. Now, it just keeps going. Taibbi says, these initial reports are based on searches for docs linked to prominent executives whose names are already public. They, of course, include Yoel Roth, former Trust and Safety Policy Advisor, Vijaya, and recently plank-walked Deputy General Counsel and former FBI top lawyer who's a liar at two agencies now, Jim Baker, who was in the Michael Sussman saga trial that we covered in length. So what they're doing is they're just searching for these people's names and they're reading through their records. So they're just like skimming from the surface. There's a lot more to go here. Now, one particular Slack channel offers a unique window into the evolving thinking of top officials in late 2020 and early 2021. Pretty important time. We had the election in late 2020. We had the transition of power 2021. A lot of conversations taking place about America. On October 8th, 2020, the month right before the election, executives opened a channel called US 2020_XFN_enforcement. Through J6, this would be the home for discussions about election-related removals, especially ones that involved, quote, high-profile accounts, often called VITs or very important tweeters. Isn't that cute? So XFN enforcement. It's a Slack channel. And if you're not familiar with Slack, think of them kind of like chat rooms. So you can open up a chat room for like your legal department or for like your marketing department. Here, they've got their election censorship removal anti-America department. Okay. So here's what they write in that channel. At 3:47, they write, hey, everyone. Starting tomorrow, October 9th, and up until November 15th, which is the critical dates right before the election, this channel will be used for the following reasons related to the US 2020 elections. We've got a bunch of bullet points that are poorly formatted, which is typical for the, lazy Twitter employees. They write here, following purposes will be used, trends identified that require scaled investigations. Okay. High profile account escalations that potentially require P2 soft interventions, scalable solutions, edge cases for XFN consultations, highlight tech issues, bugs, tools, outages, JIRA tickets. This is an enforcement channel between TS and TWS to help speed up our response related to election-related issues over the coming weeks. GET, which is one of those other sort of committees, right, that censors people. GET will start providing a handover starting on APAC shift tomorrow, Friday, October 9th, using the following template. Next shift, EMEA APAC/NA. Thursday, October 8th, GET. So they're sort of, it sounds like assigning roles. Open escalations, none. Notes from the shift, ask. Can you please make sure everyone on your team is within the same channel? The teams that we included are as follows: site integrity, safety policy, product trust, safety, media, ops, global escalation teams. If you have any questions, let me know. All right, so kind of a really strangely structured message, but that was dropped into the Slack channel for the election censorship team there at Twitter. Now, Matt says, okay, there was at least some tension between safety operations, a larger department whose staffers used a more rules-based process for addressing issues like naughty videos and scam and threats, and smaller, more powerful cadre of senior policy execs like Roth and Gotti. Yeah, you've got people who have like a manual. You know, they're following the manual, open it up. This is what is illegal. And they make a decision on that. But then they go over to Yoel and he says, well, why don't we just kind of change those rules and we can apply the spam rule. And the other people on the team are saying, yeah, but it's not spam. I mean, you trained us to do it this way and you're doing it differently. Why are the executives treating things differently than we are? So there's this tension. The latter group of these high-profile censors were a high-speed Supreme Court of moderation, issuing content rulings on the fly, often in minutes and based on guesses, gut calls, and even Google searches, even in cases involving the president, right? So it's like a pep rally for tweets, and they just decide what gets thrown out and what stays. All in one chat room. Donald Trump, this tweet gets posted. Breaking. 50,000 Ohio voters are out of control getting the wrong absentee ballots. And they respond to that, and he makes a claim about the election, and they respond to that in this Twitter thread. In the Twitter thread, in the Slack channel thread, they write, oh, that statement about the 2020 election would be enough to be a violation, right? Like that's enough. Like he said that word. If the claim of fact were inaccurate, yes. But it looks like that's true. So he did a Google search, right? So he's fact checking the president. NPR search, 50,000 Ohio voters received new absentee ballots after an error found. All right. So we've got Yoel, who is literally fact checking the president, getting to decide whether the president's tweets stays up or not, up or down, right? Yoel Roth, who, who knows who that person is or what society gave him the authority. As far as I know, we didn't, but he has taken it now. Fact checking the president, issuing violations in a secret cabal chat room at Twitter. None of us knew of this. Taibbi says, during this time, executives were also clearly liaising with federal enforcement and intelligence agencies about moderation of election content. While we're still at the heart of reviewing the Twitter files, we're finding out more about these interactions every day. And so are other attorneys general, including those from Missouri and Louisiana. They have been in continued litigation with the Biden administration about exactly what government officials were involved. Taibbi says, Policy Director Nick Pickles is asked if they should say Twitter detects, quote, misinfo through ML human review and, quote, partnerships with outside experts, asterisks. The employee asks, I know that's been a slippery process. Not sure if you want our public explanation to hang on that. Okay, in other words, why are you censoring? What's the basis for the censoring? Is it human review? Is it, who's telling you to hit this stuff up or to censor this stuff? They sort of know it's external third parties, but they can't tell everybody that. They can't communicate that to all of us. 14:19 p.m. And Pickles, are you comfortable with marketing talking about misinfo by saying we detected it through ML and human review and partnerships with outside experts? Like you want our marketing people? Here's how I sort of envision this happening, okay? Marketing is meeting with some advertising company. Advertising companies, we're concerned about our brand being tainted by dangerous speech. And they say, oh no, don't worry about that. We have a very robust misinfo policing platform that we think a lot of people care about. And maybe a lot of advertisers care about it or not. I don't know. But I mean, I've never once thought about that in advertising. I'm concerned about other messages on other free speech platforms or whatever. Anyways, you get the point. So they're saying marketing is now putting this robust packet together that they're going to send out to everybody. And one of the bullet points about why Twitter's so great to advertise on is that we've got external partners who help us with our moderation. Are you sure you want us to talk about that? Because we both know who those outside experts are. Okay, it's not another company. We're not outsourcing this to Amazon's web services or something, right? It's called the FBI. They're the outside expert. Somebody says, I know that's a slippery process, so I'm not sure if you want our public explanation to hang our hat on that. We don't want marketing blasting that all over the place in their conversations. So Nick Pickles, who looks like this, says, can we just say partnerships? Let's just say partnerships. We don't have to say it's the FBI. So he says, for example, not sure we describe the FBI, DHS as experts or some NGOs that aren't academic. Let's just call them partners rather than the FBI. Sounds a lot better. Pickles asks if partnerships works. After a pause, he says, not sure we can describe them as experts, meaning the FBI and DHS, which means that they're meeting with them, right? They're directly meeting with the government to talk about this censorship. That's the government becoming an actor. It's the government taking this action by putting their thumb on the big tech companies. It's direct censorship from our own government, which is a violation of our constitutional rights. Matt continues, he says, this post about the Hunter Biden laptop situation shows that Roth not only met weekly with the FBI and the DHS, but also with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. And back during this time, right, this would have been Trump's ODNI. We have a bot that is dropping some sort of a message, bot application. And so maybe Yoel is submitting a form. So something that you can do in Slack a lot of the time, and we do this at our office, is we have different apps that work into Slack, right? So like if you go over to Process Street, for example, or if you go over to a form stack or something, you can actually submit a form on a Google form and have it pop up a notification in Slack, right? Because maybe you don't want people to just use Slack haphazardly just for whatever loosey-goosey chats that they might want to send. You want only updates that are properly formatted through a form. So that happens here. Yoel submits a form and an application pops up into the chat. It says Yoel R has checked in, Yoel Roth. Here's what they said in the form. What's new since your last check-in, right? It's a form. Hacked materials exploded. We blocked the New York Post story, but then we unblocked it, but said the opposite. Then we said we unblocked it. And now we're in a messy situation where our policy is in shambles. Comms is angry. Reporters thinks we're idiots. You are. And we're refactoring an exceedingly complex policy 18 days out from the election. In short, FML, which means F my life. Weekly sync with the FBI, DHS, DNI regarding election security, meaning they met again. This is outstanding. So apparently they've got this, there are some companies that and some tech sort of development methodologies like Scrum where you or Agile. There are these different like working methodologies where you have to provide updates, right? Give us an update. Check in. What's the latest? Keep everybody in the loop. And so this guy's sort of pouring his heart out. It's like a live journal or something. FML. FML. My life's really hard because I'm terrible at my job. You are responsible for every one of these consequences, idiot. So why are you effing your life? You did it to yourself. You shouldn't have blocked the story. Weekly sync with the FBI and the DHS and the DNI is continuing, right? That's open acknowledgement. The government is meeting with Twitter, and election security must mean that they're censoring information. What else can it mean? Misinformation, disinformation. We've heard the government acknowledge this from their own mouths, that this is the biggest problem in the whole stinking planet. The meeting happened, and this is Yoel's update. The meeting happened about 15 minutes after the aforementioned hacked materials implosion. The government declined to share anything useful when asked. Monthly meetings with the FBI, FITF, briefed on several ongoing investigations. FBI is sharing investigatory information with Yoel Roth from Twitter, the head of trust and safety over there, getting detailed reports from the FBI on a weekly basis. And they nuked the Hunter Biden story, and they were having conversations with the government about that. Oh my gosh. So the meeting happened about 15 minutes after the aforementioned hacked materials implosion. They nuked the New York Post story on the phone 15 minutes later with the federal government talking about it. Government doesn't share anything useful when asked. What was the question? Did Yoel ask them, is there any truth to this laptop? Because we just nuked the story. Okay, we thought it was hacked materials. Is it hacked materials, FBI? Are these hacked materials? What was the conversation? He said nothing useful. They declined to share anything useful when asked. The FBI had the laptop at this time. They had it back in 2019. This is 2020. So why didn't the FBI say, no, it's actually, they're sharing several stories about ongoing investigations. They had an ongoing investigation into Hunter Biden. Did they bring it up? Did they ask him? Because the FBI could have said, no, it's not hacked material. Psychos, it's real. You see Hunter Biden on there smoking crack in a bed with hookers. Of course it's real. But they all kept their mouths shut because they loved what was happening. No, perfect. Yeah, censor that story. This is exactly what we wanted. I mean, it's unbelievable. So it's believable, but it's unbelievable to see that it's actually happening. This guy, the head of Twitter, sitting and admitting openly in Slack channels that they are colluding with the federal government in the weeks up before the election. And they're nuking stories, and the FBI is complicit, not even providing any more information about that one story, but there's a whole bunch of information about other ongoing investigations. In fact, there's so much to say, so much involvement with the FBI that they have weekly and monthly meetings in America where we have the First Amendment, which says our speech shall not be abridged, right? And they're abridging the crap out of it openly with the federal government in hand. Unbelievable. Matt Taibbi continues. He says, Roth's report to the FBI, the DHS, and the DNI is almost farcical in its self-flagellating tone. Said, we blocked the New York Post story, then unblocked it, but said the opposite. Combs is angry. Reporters think we're idiots. And in short, F my life. It is a ridiculous post. It's like a high school girl. No offense to high school girls, and shout out to the youngest girlie at the Three Girlies household. All right, we've got Matt Taibbi. He continues. He says, some of Roth's later slacks indicate his weekly confabs with federal law enforcement involving separate meetings. Here, he ghosts the FBI and the DHS respectively to go first on an Aspen Institute thing, then take a call with Apple. So he's just, having a field day over there. He loves the attention. He's excited as can be. He's saving America, fighting for democracy and protecting against misinformation. All right. Yoel says at 8:03, he says to Patrick, he says, hey, Pat, hey there. I have to miss the FBI and the DHS meetings today, unfortunately. Got to get rid of the FBI. Can you reschedule those? He says, I saw you're on the invites for both as our site policy. Okay. FBI DHS meeting with the entire stinking company, the site policy team. Can you give me a quick readout if there's anything interesting that comes up? Pat says, yeah, Yoel, I mean, it's the FBI and the DHS. I hope that everything's okay. Yoel says, yeah, it's fine. Just have conflicts at both times. An Aspen Institute thing this morning on vaccines that I have to present at, and then a call with Apple to avoid us getting kicked out of the App Store during the DHS one. And so Pat says, well, those both seem very important. Yoel says, indeed. Yeah, very important man. Here, the FBI sends reports about a pair of tweets, the second of which involves a former Tippecanoe County, Indiana councilor and a Republican named John Basham claiming between 2 and 25% of the ballots are being rejected for errors. John Basham is a meteorologist and a data scientist that I'm following, and you should too. A U.S. Army retired, OS intelligence, SIG intelligence. Yeah, great follow. Yeah, and he is here talking about some concerns. On Twitter, they're communicating about this. 7:04, they post in Slack. Somebody says, all right, we just got a report from the FBI concerning these two tweets linked here. Something related to the shredding of a mail-in ballot, something. This is a proven false story. PolitiFact is the one that's reporting on this one. So they're referencing PolitiFact as a source for fact checking, which is hysterical because there are very little facts reported at PolitiFact. But all right. So they dropped that in the tweet. Do we have a moment ready for this one? Talking about shredding documents. Says, 2, I believe, was deemed a no vio on numerous occasions. Taibbi says, the FBI's second report concerned this tweet. You see here, Mr. John Basham on Twitter posted something like this. They said that Democrats are in complete panic as their massive push for vote by mail is backfiring on them. Two things are unfolding. An unexpected number of registered Republicans are returning ballots, and between 20 to 25% are being rejected for errors. And that's the claim from John Basham on Twitter. And he's posting pictures about some of this stuff. Now, the FBI flagged the tweet. FBI says, that's a big problem. That got circulated in the enforcement Slack. So literally the government communicating to Twitter, you need to stop this tweet. You need to suppress this person's free speech. The government needs to silence this individual. John Basham, silenced by the federal government. Twitter cited PolitiFact to say that the story was proven to be false, then noted the second story was already deemed to be no vio. The group then decides to apply a, quote, learn how voting is safe and secure label because one commenter says it's totally normal to have a 2% error rate. Roth then gives the final go-ahead to the process initiated by the FBI. He says, well, I think we can use the mail-in voting label for this one as is. That's all we need. So we're not going to censor him. We're just going to mislabel him. We're going to just slap our context label on there. Matt says, examining the entire election enforcement Slack, we didn't see one reference to moderation requests from the Trump campaign, not from the Trump White House and not from Republicans generally. We looked. They may exist. We were told they do. However, they were absent here. Didn't see anything from the Republicans. But in one case, hang on, that was 27. Does it go from 27 to 31? Did he delete something? I think he might have deleted a tweet. 27. Is there 28? I don't think there is. So it goes from 27 to 31. He tells us that there may have been some other incidents. In one case, former Governor Mike Huckabee joke tweets about the mail-in ballots for his, quote, deceased parents and grandparents. Look at Mike. He's a nice guy. He's just joking, man. He says, stood in the rain for an hour to early vote today. When I got home, I filled in my stack of mail-in ballots and then voted the ballots of my deceased parents and grandparents. They vote just like me. Trump 2020. Hashtag I voted. Right? It's a joke. It's a joke. So let's see what Twitter did, freaking out. So that inspires a long Slack message that reads like a Titania McGrath parody, which is just an outstanding parody account, by the way. Also well worth a follow. Let's see what she's up to here. Okay, yeah, she's well worth a follow. She's very... Yeah, here she is. A great post from Titiana McGrath. She says, the idea that there are biological differences between trans women and cis women is transphobic myths. I defy anyone to identify the trans woman in this photo. Yeah, so she's like, Titania's definitely right. Yeah, some very astute observations over there. So Matt says, go follow Titiana McGrath. Says, I agree it's a joke, concedes one Twitter employee, but he's also literally admitting in a tweet a crime. So Twitter employees are like, we could technically execute him for that, though. Maybe we should call the FBI. Yo, you meet with them, don't you? Can you report this crime from Mike Huckabee? He's voting for his grandparents. Taibbi says, the group declares that Huck's, quote, an edge case. That tweet's an edge case. Okay, this one's a close call. Stood in the rain to send my dead grandparents and grandparents their ballots into the mail. Look at this guy. What a monster. I feel unsafe that this tweet is still up. Actually, I'm even looking at that screenshot. So Huckabee is an edge case. And though one notes, we don't make exceptions for jokes or satire, they ultimately decide to leave him be because, quote, we've poked enough bears. These people are so monstrous. They've already, right? They're literally like, they know they're using this game. It's almost like a game. How far can we go? How far will they let us go? Can we go to Trump? What happens if we go to Trump? We got some of the doctors, some of the COVID doctors. We got some of Trump's people. We got Bannon. We got Alex Jones. We got, what else is out there? What about Kayleigh McEnany? Okay, she's a press secretary. She's in the government, but I mean, she's part of Trump's entourage. Can we get her too? We've got her too. Should we take out Libs? Libs is too close. Should we take out Huckabee? It's too close. It's an edge case. Let's save some of that juice for a bigger fish. Taibbi says, that could still mislead people. It could still mislead people, the humor-averse group declares before moving on from Huckabee. Here's what the message looked like from the internal Slack. 7:44, somebody sends a message. Hello, I'm putting this tweet here on everybody's radar. This appears to be a joke, but other people might actually believe it. Can I get you to weigh in on this? Mike Huckabee is making jokes on Twitter. And so Yoel says, Mike Huckabee, Yeah, I saw this one last night. I agree it's a joke, but he's also literally admitting in a tweet to a crime. Somebody says, yeah, could still mislead people. But although misleading, in my opinion, I don't think that it can unduly influence an election, but it could still mislead people. Yoel says, yeah, I could see us taking action under misleading claims that cause confusion about the established laws, regulations, and procedures of a civics process. So he's like, yeah, we have a policy, but he said it's not one that we could really label in a useful way. So it's removal of a stupid and ill-advised joke or nothing. He's like, we can't context this. We can't label it up. So we either got to remove it or not. So I'm inclined maybe to not remove without a report from voting authorities. So like maybe he should call the FBI again, given that it's been a while since he tweeted it and virtually all of the replies I'm seeing are critical and counter speech, right? So everybody's, in other words, the marketplace of ideas is addressing the problem, right? You don't need some psycho censor like Yoel to go in and put his thumb on everybody's neck. Instead, let the people just hash that one out on Twitter. Somebody else chimes in and says, I tend to agree. I feel like it's really an edge case, and we've poked enough bears recently. So it's a little hot. Temperature's a little bit warm for them. This looks like Pat again. Patrick, he says, oof, I just saw this. Looking at the replies now to get a feel for if much confusion is being generated. And a quick glance indicates that people aren't confused, obviously. But Pat, of course, has concerns. Under the policy, we don't make exceptions for jokes or satire. This guy hates Huckabee. So while I doubt that Huck was really stupid and is joking, I'm inclined to say that it should come down. He wants him out of there. Somebody else responds, I wonder how much of it is an attempt to play the ref prior to the congressional hearing. Is that the goal, is to get it censored? But yeah, as Patrick says, the policy didn't have that carve out. Somebody else responds and says, the thrust of the joke seems to be that mail-in ballots are for the fraudulent vote. So I could see an argument for our mail-in voting label, but absent confusion, I'd also be inclined to leave the joke alone. Okay, it's a joke. That's what's going on there in Twitter. Rather than just leaving it up because it's speech and it's free and it's not inciting violence and it's not doing anything spammy and it's perfectly acceptable. You have, I wonder what this conversation cost, right? That's why Elon fired literally everybody, because this is what was going on in their Twitter accounts, in their Slack channels. I'm sure he just walked in there and he said, let me just look at the Slack channels. Let me just see all the Slack. He doesn't have to go anywhere else in the company or talk to anybody. Just says, make me an admin account on the Slack channel and let me see what's going on. And then he just said, okay, yeah, for sure. 90% of you, you're gone. You're gone, because he's looking at this. This is what they're arguing about all day. All right, Mike Huckabee's jokes. That's a joke. All right, so Titiana McGrath, a great follow. Back over to Matt Taibbi. He says in 33, he says, Yoel Roth suggests moderation. Even in this absurd case, he says it could depend on whether or not the jokes result in confusion. This seemingly silly case actually foreshadows serious issues later. In the docs, execs are often expanding criteria to subjective issues like intent. Yes, a video is authentic, but why was it shown? Orientation. Was a banned tweet shown to condemn or to support, or reception? Did a joke cause confusion? This reflex will become key in J6. So in other words, what they're saying is, In the law, and when you talk about policies and sort of creating policies, one way that you set a standard and then measure something against the standard is whether there's sort of two different tests. You can have an objective test where there's just a standard set and it doesn't matter what a person was thinking or what a person was doing. If a reasonable person thought that this was a bad thing, then we would say that measured against that standard of a reasonable person, it's objective, right? Whatever a reasonable person would do, it doesn't matter if it's a doctor, it doesn't matter if it's an airplane pilot, it doesn't matter if it's a lawyer or a plumber. It doesn't matter. There's an objective standard. Whatever happened, happened. There's another standard called a subjective standard, and it matters what's in the mind of the person. And we don't use a lot of subjective standards in the law because it's kind of difficult to say what's in a person's mind. But sometimes you'll mash these two things together, and it turns like self-defense is one of these things. Like, what would a reasonably objective person in that position do? Here, though, they're trying to use the subjective intent. What was that person thinking in their mind? It's better to have a regular standard. Did this incite violence? No. Then it stays. Then it's up. It's free speech. This is America. But here they're saying, well, if the video is authentic, like if the Hunter Biden smoking crack video with hookers in his bedroom, if that's authentic, then that may be allowed under the policy because it's not hacked materials. But the question is subjective. Why was it shown? Oh, it's because they wanted to make Hunter Biden look bad. And so therefore, we need to find a reason, right? We're measuring it subjectively. Orientation. Was it shown to condemn or to support? Is this a pro tweet or a negative tweet? Or did this cause confusion, right? How did the joke land? So they're making up policies as they go along. Matt gives us another example. He says that Twitter employees prepare to slap a mail-in voting is safe warning label on a Trump tweet about a postal screw-up in Ohio before realizing the events took place, which meant, it's accurate. So this tweet came in from ABC News 13. Nearly 50,000 voters got the wrong ballots. Do you feel safe mailing in your ballot? Trump said no. And so they have a conversation about this. Yoel says, oh, great. He posts this. He's very upset. He saw Trump's tweet. And he says, Trump just posted these two tweets. And he linked them. Not sure what the process is, but are we expected to do the policy comms write-up for this? Somebody says, we better wait until Yoel wakes up. He's the only person who really has authority on this. Yoel comes back in and he says, I've been on vacation, everybody. I've been on paid time off, so I'm not 100% up to speed on this. My understanding in both cases is that the events took place and that the commentary by POTUS is his opinion related to these real events, so there wouldn't be any labeling or action on our side. Wow. He's saying you can stay up without any labels. He says, yeah, those are factually accurate. Somebody else says at the bottom, thanks for clarifying. So Yoel is very disappointed that they can't nuke that tweet, but unfortunately, it's true. And that is the final post from Matt. Let's see if he dropped any others. We have some more. Very well done on speed is the title of the next tweet. They say that Trump was being visibly filtered as late as a week before the election. In these clips, senior executives didn't appear to have a particular violation, but they still worked fast to make sure that a fairly anodyne Trump tweet couldn't be, quote, replied to, shared, or liked. All right. They literally censored the president a week before the election. All right. Censored him. Here's what that looked like. Trump says big problems and discrepancies with mail-in ballots must have the final vote total on November 3rd. And they say some or all of the content shared in this tweet is disputed, and it might be misleading about an election or other civic process. Learn more. Therefore, this tweet you can see on the bottom can't be replied to, shared, or liked. So in other words, this is a dead tweet. All right. Trump posted this. Presumably nobody saw it. It's October 26, 2022. The election hasn't even happened yet. Can you not talk about elections and whether or not they're being conducted properly in the months before that? Are you not allowed to do that in America? I thought you were allowed to do that in America. But Twitter said no, the sitting president was not allowed to do that. They disagreed with it and they shut his mouth up. They shut him up, the president, a citizen of this country, on Twitter. Now, they had a big conversation about this where they were all probably, glad handing each other, very excited about this. They wrote, what's the team's recommendation? They share a Google Doc with us. They say, all right, thank you. We agree. I agree with the recommendation. Flagging right now with leadership, giving its POTUS. So his team sends this over to Yoel. Yoel defers it down to the rest of the, interns. Can you guys figure out what to do with this? They say, nuke him. He says, perfect. I agree. Let me run this up the flagpole to Vijaya and to Jack. He says, I'll set up a call. Can we use a new doc per the P2 review? So copy all of the stuff in the first document, send it over to a different document. Okay, yeah, I'll include that in our playbook after. They send over the new document, right? This is the new Google Doc. I wonder if that link is still valid. And I'd be curious if somebody tried that, if that link is still valid. But EDI approved. EDI approved down there at the bottom. That sounds good. So that means go. That means go. Yeah, nuke them. Add the context label. We love it. All of that is submitted, and Twitter moves quickly. The group is pleased with the Trump tweet and that it's dealt with quickly. Yoel is here, and he continues. It's been approved. We can eliminate everybody. Let's inform the stakeholders and move forward. Somebody says, did you still want to do a call? He says, no, can skip pager duty too. It happened too already. We'll be talking to everybody involved. I'm going to go apply the EDI now. Is there a thread already with comms, etc.? Like, does comms know? Do the other team know about this? Drafting it up now. Okay, email has been sent. Somebody in red responds. You can follow the colors, so we all know who Yoel Roth is. Blue responds. You still want to do a call? Yoel, no, we can skip. Blue responds. Okay, I'm drafting up another document. Blue says email sent, and then red comes in and says, very well done on the speed, folks. What this is all designed for, and a huge positive for this platform. Very excited. Well done. Got the president censored in basically record time. An amazing job. All from with inside Twitter. A seemingly innocuous follow-up involved a tweet from Real James Woods, who's already made an appearance in Twitter Files Part 1. He got nuked. He was censored because the DNC sent an email over to Twitter and said, we don't like James Wood because he's sharing Hunter Biden's crack video. And so Twitter said, yeah, good call. We better nuke him too. His ubiquitous presence in the argued over Twitter data set is already in the Twitter Files. It's already an in-joke. James says, Twitter is suppressing this tweet by the president. Here's a screen grab. They are. It's literally suppressed. Free speech right there. After Woods angrily quote tweeted about Trump's warning label, Twitter staff, in a preview of what ended up happening after J6, despaired of a reason for action. We got to get rid of him, but resolved to hit him hard on future violations. They're just waiting. They're just putting all of these in the back drawer because they are so angry at James Woods. They're going to drag this out and they're going to hit him big time. The conversation in Slack, October 27th. Light Blue says, considering the PV2 bug outs this weekend regarding James Woods being so over the strike limit that our tools won't even work on him, they've been striking him left and right. They say, I'd suggest we action him for something worth the fiasco rather than this screenshot, since we don't have a firm policy basis for action on his account. They can't get him. They're like, can we get him for this? He's making us look so stupid. So if somebody in red responds, yep, are you fine letting this one lie, Blue? Can hit him hard on future bios with a firmer basis. They're all just plotting to silence other people. Taibbi continues. He tells us that here, a label is applied to a Georgia Republican Congresswoman, Jody Hice, for saying, quote, say no to big tech censorship, and saying, quote, mailed-in ballots are more prone to problems than in-person ballots. It's just common sense, she said. Right? And that's her opinion. Rep. Jody Hice shared this tweet. Twitter doesn't want you to see this tweet by Tom Fitton. Say no to big tech censorship. Guess what she got for that message, or he got? Censored. Yeah, right there. He got a label there. Stay informed. Learn how voting by mail is safe and secure. Right. And so, yeah, he got the little moderation label on there, too. Is it really free speech? Are you really free to say something if everywhere you go, you have this little monster on your shoulder saying the opposite of everything that you say? You say, I like pizza. And they say, well, pizza is fatty and very bad for you and you shouldn't have it. It's got a lot of oil and it's a lot of carbs and it's really not that healthy for you. It's like, well, okay, well, can you shut up, please? Because you're interfering with my ability to speak freely. Kind of what's happening here. Except Twitter is doing this to elected politicians and American citizens, and it's not a conversation about pizza. Matt Taibbi says, Twitter teams went easy on EC, only applying a, quote, soft intervention, with Roth worrying about a wah-wah censorship optics backlash. So the most dramatic cisgender hyper-privileged white male in all of Twitter is now mocking free speechers as wah-wah censorship. The man who can't even start really speaking about anything without clarifying his orientation and identity. Bizarre. But he's blaming people who care about free speech in this country as wah-wah censors. Just wah-wah, kind of mocking them like little babies. Now, let's see what he says in this Slack. Light Purple Pink says, Devil's advocate here. Pink says, the quoted tweet still shows up with the EDI, and the actual content that the representative says is lower level. It says, quote, more fraud with mail-in ballots than in person is much more of a legitimate statement, even if scale is minuscule. So you've got Pink, who's kind of fighting for this. I think I'd just lean towards putting an MIB soft intervention on this rather than the full EDI. Yol says, I agree. Pat says, yep, I agree on that too. I think going too far down the rabbit hole of labeling critical speech, i.e. critical of our handling of this case, is dangerous. True. It becomes a self-reinforcing wah-wah censorship cycle. Yeah, well, you guys were actually censoring, Yol. That's why we're all crying about it, because you were literally impinging on and violating our constitutional rights. Conlon is also, Patrick, he says, I'm currently responding to Judicial Watch's whining to public policy. I regret nothing, but I'm happy to iterate what rules they violated. Judicial Watch. Tom Fitton over there. Nice organization. And they are happily calling their legitimate, perfectly legitimate complaints. They know that they're perfectly legitimate. They know they're censoring. They know they're misapplying the rules to one contingent of the country. But when Judicial Watch complains about it, it's whining. That's who's in charge over at Twitter. Now, Taibbi continues. In 41, he says, meanwhile, there are multiple instances of involving pro-Biden tweets warning Trump, quote, may try to steal the election that got surfaced, only to be approved by senior executives. This one, they decide, quote, just expresses concern that mail-in ballots might not make it on time. All right, so if Trump comes out and says there are problems with mail-in ballots, but Biden comes out and says Trump is lying about that, right? Trump's gets the marker, but Biden's doesn't. Here is what Elijah Daniel posted. Daniel said that this is so disgusting and terrifying. They're going to try to steal the election. You have 1 week. If you haven't voted yet, don't mail, drop it off, or vote early. If you can't vote, make sure your family is. Unless they're Trump voters, just let them forget. So don't let the Trump voters vote. Get everybody else out there. Vote, #vote them out. So this was when Chief Justice John Roberts was swearing in Amy Coney Barrett. You can see they're doing the social distancing crap October 27, 2020. Right? That's when the balance of power changed from Ruth Bader Ginsburg to Amy Coney Barrett. Left freaked out about it. So they talk about this on Twitter. Elijah Daniel, that comment is, hey team, can I get your opinion on this? He literally just said they're going to steal the election, right? And this was in October, way before the election even took place. He says, don't tell your Trump supporting families to vote. This is an edge case with commentary encouraging voters not to vote by mail. I believe we should label it, says Light Blue, who's pretty reasonable, because that would at least be consistent, right? Like it would be consistent. Like if they're going to have one policy where they just label everything about ballots, like mail-in ballots with a get the truth about mail-in ballots, at least that would be consistent. It would be asinine, but it would still be consistent. So Blue wants to be consistent and apply it to him, just like they applied it to Trump. But Pat Conlon, who played a long con, says, I think I'd not bother with labeling this one. It's still encouraging people to vote, but it expresses the concern that mailed ballots might not make it in time, which seems fair this close to the election date. Still encouraging people to turn in their ballots in person or to vote in person. And Light Blue says, okay, thank you, Patrick. So, major double standard. One's okay, one's illegal and has to be nuked. 42, they write that even the hashtag, quote, steal our votes, referencing a theory that a combo of Amy Coney Barrett and Trump will steal it, is approved by Twitter brass because it's, quote, understandable. And it's also a reference to a U.S. Supreme Court decision. Somebody posted this named Dumbass Genius on Twitter. Rick says, check with your local USPS folks to see how the slow mail is. Also, find out when mail-in ballots must arrive in your state, but mostly vote ASAP. Trump and his new Amy Coney Barrett SCOTUS will try to steal our votes, so our numbers have to be huge. And he's retweeting a tweet from somebody named Jeff Bennett. Said that postal delivery times have dropped again. Yeah, because it was the middle of a pandemic and they shut the whole stinking country down. Right? Then they blame Trump for that. Oh, he's gonna steal everything. He's trying to modify the, mail-in. Right? Everybody was saying this stuff. Only one side got nuked. They had a conversation about this on Twitter. And of course, the usual suspects are there. Let's pull this one up here. Says, hi team, Red. Can I get a second opinion on this? I'm leaning towards labeling it. Roth responds, I'm not seeing the violation here. Patrick Longcon says, I wouldn't label it. I think that it's encouraging people to vote, but to be realistic, that a mail-in ballot might not make it in time. Red says, oh, perfect. Thanks, Yoel and Khan. I was wondering about this part. Trump and his new Amy Coney Barrett SCOTUS will try to steal our votes, right? That specifically, that you guys forgot to read. Conlon says, oh, yeah, that's understandable, Red. I believe that it's a reference to the U.S. Supreme Court decision on processing mail-in ballots that arrive after Election Day. What decision is he talking about? Did he just make that up out of thin air? Where did that come from? I believe that's in reference to a Supreme Court decision. Is that what that was in reference to? When he wrote this, Trump is going to steal our votes, so numbers have to be huge. That's a Supreme Court case that he's referencing. Wow, pretty amazing. Not familiar with that one. But Roth doesn't see any violation, and Red says, okay, great. Thanks. Thanks, Conlon. Thanks for your astute legal observations there and your enlightenment on Supreme Court precedent. Taibbi says, in this exchange, again, unintentionally humorous, former Attorney General Eric Holder claimed that the U.S. Postal Service was deliberately crippled, ostensibly done by the Trump administration. He was initially hit with a generic warning label, but guess who took that one off? Yoel. Eric Holder, a U.S. government official, wrote this on Twitter October 27th, the days before the election. Said, it's too late to use the mails. Given Supreme Court rulings, I urge everyone to now vote in person. Early vote or use drop boxes. Protect your health, but don't let the court and the deliberately crippled Postal Service deprive you of your most precious civil right. Plan your vote. Eric Holder says that. And Yoel saw that there was a little bit of a marker on there. because he's sowing seeds of doubt in mail-in voting, right? Big problem. The crippled Postal Service is trying to intentionally deprive you of your rights. Yoel responds and he says, guys, Eric Holder is my bro. We are like this. Hey folks, can we reverse the label on this tweet? He says everything is factually accurate now. Light Green says, oh yeah, great, working on reversing it now. He says, Yoel, I've removed the moment label. I'm still trying to remove the EDI. A couple minutes go by. He says, removed. Ross says, excellent, thank you. Love it. Great job. Eric Holder, you're in the clear. Later in November 2020, Roth asked if staff had a debunk moment on the Smartmatic vote counting stories, which his DHS, Department of Homeland Security contacts, told him were a combination of about 47 conspiracy theories. Yoel posts this in the Slack. He says, hi there, everybody. Me again. Do we have a debunk moment on the Smartmatic vote counting conspiracies? DHS referred to it on a call today, sadly not public, as a, quote, combination of about 47 different conspiracy theories. So hopefully there's stuff out there. Again, Yoel, November 18th now. So this one has a timestamp now. That would be after the election. Is now communicating that he's openly talking with the government about quashing theories about the election. More government involvement. Taibbi45 writes, on December 10th, as Trump was in the middle of firing off 25 tweets saying things like, a coup is taking place, Twitter executives announced a new L3 deamplification tool. What's that? Oh, no. This step meant a warning label now could also come with deamplification. Patrick Longcon is here. He says, hello, everyone. I want to give you an update on some of our enforcement options for tweets containing the civic misinfo that we've seen. It's been decided that tweets that we've manually reviewed and determined need a label will now be subject to L3 deamplification, further restricting the extent to which a tweet can be shared. The current batch of entity IDs will soon be used for automated labeling work, but I've created a new batch of entity IDs for the labels that we've been using for the most of the past weeks. Labels that we've only rarely used and have been deprecated already have gotten an L3 update. If there's a moment when we need the L3 version for one of those labels, please flag it to Matt and myself. To find the new entity, please look here. It's updated in the 11 December update tab for the Civic Integrity Entity IDs, right in the Strato spreadsheet. So that's them now deboosting different tweets. Some executives wanted to use the new deamplification tool to silently limit Trump's reach right away, beginning with the following tweet. They talked about this one. Trump posted this. Jim Jordan was on some TV show, and he says that Trump got 11 million votes. And in the video, there must be some message, which we can't play the video. This is just a screenshot, but it's a clip from Newsmax, and right below it, it says, stay informed. There's a claim about election fraud, and it's disputed. However, in the end, the team had to use the older, less aggressive labeling tool until the L3 entities went live the following morning, so they're moving quickly. Yellow says, hey, thanks, Longcon. Should enforcement with the new entities start now, or should it wait until the policy officially goes live tomorrow? Conlon says, good point. Let's start enforcement tomorrow per the morning PST. That'll save the APAC crew from having to do it, and the Dublin office will only have to change things towards the end of the day. Thanks. Hey team, recommending to label Donald Trump with a generic fraud claim, says Pink. If okay, I can confirm to use the new identity ID. Conlon says, let's use the old one for the generic fraud claims. We won't use the L3 entities until tomorrow morning by San Fran time. Copy that. Thank you. All of that working towards banning Trump. Now, Taibbi says that the significance here is that it shows that Twitter, in 2020 at least, was deploying a vast range of visible and invisible tools to rein in Trump's engagement long before J6. The ban will come after other avenues are exhausted, and they continue to do that. Taibbi says in Twitter docs, executives frequently refer to bots. It says, let's put a bot on that. A bot is just an automated heuristic moderation rule. It can be anything. Every time a person in Brazil uses green and blob in the same sentence, action might be taken. So sort of like automated rules. Bot application P01 DM9 is now activated. And they're still dropping tweets. And so we'll see what Matt still has for us as this continues on. But my goodness, very interesting that he's dropping all of these right back to back. And I'm not sure how much more he's got or what else he's going to get to today. But my goodness, some whoppers in there. And it is sort of surprising, but not a surprise. The fact that they are so heavily leaning on certain individuals that are actually in office is quite shocking. Taibbi continues. He says, in this instance, it appears that the moderators added a bot for Trump claims made on Breitbart. The bot ends up becoming an automated tool invisibly watching both Trump and apparently Breitbart. They're going to add media IDs to the bot. Trump by J6 was quickly covered in bots. Here's the tweet. Trump posted this. If we don't root out these issues, then we don't have a country anymore. So that's the tweet that hits the post. And on the Slack channel, they say, hey, it's 7:23. They say, hey, team, I'm going to add a fraud claim label to this. Claim of fraud is in about 40 seconds of the video. Drops the tweet, links over to Yoel Roth. Yoel says, yep. Red down at the bottom says, okay, great. I'm also going to add the media ID to the bot. Okay, so there's another bot. Now, Matt says there is no way to follow the frenzied exchanges among Twitter personnel from between J6 and 8th without knowledge of the basics of the company's vast lexicon of acronyms and other Orwellian unwords. And there are a lot of those. He says that to bounce an account is to put it in timeout, usually for a 12-hour review or a cool-off. Yoel says on this one, he says, gave a heads up to folks, give it another few minutes, then proceed with bouncing. Gave a heads up to folks, give it another few minutes, then proceed with bouncing, right? And this is a link to Trump to protesters. He says, I know your pain, but you have to go home now. 12-hour review cool-off period is what that looks like. Interstitial, one of the many nouns used as a verb in Twitter speak. Denialist is another, means placing a physical label atop a tweet so that it can't be seen. Okay, so he's going to share more about that with us in a minute. Andy P sends in the super chat. He says, did you ever check out the silent weapons for quiet wars? I DM'd you on Twitter about it. It was a manual discovered in 1986 in a surplus IBM copier. No, I've not heard of that, but I'm copying and pasting that right now. Thank you, NDP. I'm not familiar with that. If you send it in a DM, I don't know what I did with that, but I found it here on archive.org, and I also found it on Amazon. Very interesting document. All right, so Taibbi says, thank you for that, Andy. Taibbi says, interstitial, one of the many nouns used. He says that P2 also has multiple meanings, one being public interest interstitial, right? That is he says the post below, a covering label for public interest reasons, right? That's probably the label. The post below references the proactive V, proactive visibility filtering. Let's look at this. Okay, it says FTR, these were interstitialed by our agents who were prioritizing our proactive Q, V and GQ. So process working well at the moment from that perspective. This is all taking place, look, right here on January 6th, Wednesday. This one's also time stamped. All here. Somebody's asking about Matt Taibbi. Of course, he is a journalist. He's got a Substack. I think he's written for multiple places, some of the big entities, but now he's an independent guy and he's got a Substack. And of course, he is sort of alternative media. And so is Barry Weiss. These are people who used to be sort of mainstream journalists and then they abandoned ship because they got tired of the disgusting behavior. So we know a little bit more about these labels. Now, it's interesting. I mean, these would have been a little bit more useful earlier in the thread. So I'm wondering if he just kind of is adding these now. He says, this is all necessary background to J6, right? Before the riots, the company was engaged in an inherently insane, impossible project, trying to create an ever-expanding, ostensibly rational set of rules to regulate every conceivable speech situation that might arise between humans. Yeah, they have to monitor and measure everything, right? There's a standard that exists. It's called free speech, man. It's not complicated. You don't need a million rules for a million genders and a million different trigger, happy individuals who get agitated about every stinking slight. You just handle it easily with free speech. But they wanted to create an entire system that would allow them to maintain their power and their control. So Julie Kelly's over here. We've also got some other Laverne Spicer. Proactive visibility filtering sounds like communism. Yeah, it's a good one. I think that's true. It's sort of like what they're trying to build in China, literally. Okay, social credit scores. We played a clip here of a gentleman walking across the street in China. He said that if you do that, that's a jaywalking ticket. They've got facial recognition software. They identify who you are. They deduct the funds right from your bank account because everything is monitored and tracked. They want a rational set of rules to regulate every conceivable speech situation that might arise between humans, like a bunch of psychos. Taibbi continues. He says, this project was preposterous, obviously, yet its leaders were unable to see this, having become infected with groupthink, coming to believe sincerely that it was Twitter's responsibility to control as much as possible what people could talk about, how often, and with whom. The firm's executives on day one of the January 6th crisis at least tried to pay lip service to its dizzying array of rules. But by day two, they began wavering. And by day three, 1 million rules were reduced to just one. What we say goes. And what we want to happen, happens. And that's exactly right. I mean, they were doing this all through the entire thread today. They were just coming up with reasons to support a decision. They didn't make a decision based on reasons. They came up with reasons to make a decision. Even the firm executives were doing it. Taibbi knows it. They know it. Everybody knows it. All right. And so he's still dropping. And so we'll keep hanging out for a little bit. Now, what's Elon up to? Because he's got to be commenting on some other stuff. So let's go check out what Elon's up to. And we'll also see what Barry's up to. So she's sort of standing by, letting the tweet thread drop. Elon is here. There's more. 3 people resigned from trust and safety in the Twitter council today. Somebody named Ann Collier. She, her, youth advocate, great. Writer, and she gave a talk at TEDx. Brilliant. Oh, so they left. So 3, former people gone. We're announcing our resignation today. Elon is letting the safety of this platform go to heck. Says, we don't trust our digital safety. Ann's been working on this platform for 20 years. We're council members and we respect everybody in public discussion. But I know I can no longer find a reason to support what Twitter has become. Here they're saying that hate slurs against black and gay men have jumped 195% and 58% respectively. Anti-Semitic posts have soared more than 61% after Musk's acquiring of Twitter. And so they're all out of here. Signed by Iri Liani, Ann Collier. Look, Leslie Podesta. Oh, that name's familiar. Leslie Podesta. That's an interesting name. Yeah, and Elon says, okay, shame on you. Laura Logan responded, said, while you sat on that council, Ann, children were being trafficked and you knew it and you did nothing. You should not be able to just walk away. You should be held accountable. Elon says, yes, indeed. Shame on them. Ella Irwin says, I wish this was false, but my experience this year supports this. Talking about funding. Elon said if the Feds raise rates again next week, the recession is going to be greatly amplified. Yeah, the recession. So apparently he's saying that the recession is coming. It's just going to be bigger. Eliza said that Twitter prioritized the censorship of non-illegal speech over the removal of CSAM material at scale. It's true. Yeah, they've worked really hard on that project to shut everybody down and regulate all speech. Elon says that's correct. Much more interested in making sure you can't speak than actually removing actual horrific content. Elon's responding to this. What's this response? So they all resigned. Cernovich said, you all belong in jail. Elon said, it is a crime that they refused to take action on CSAM exploitation for years. Elon says, wow, look at this. Woo. We got a battle of the billionaires here. Elon Musk says it's a crime that they refused to take action on child exploitation for years. Jack says, this is false. Jack says, I'm the CEO. We worked really hard on that. This is false. Elon says, no, it is not. Oh, so the bromance is over. Yeah, the bromance is over because Elon was vouching for Jack. Jack allowed all of this crap to happen. And of course, Elon is saying, no, it's not Jack. It's not false. You were responsible. You were in charge. When Ella Irwin, who now runs Trust and Safety, joined Twitter earlier this year, almost no one was working on child safety, says Elon. No one. She raised this with Ned and Parag, but they rejected her staffing request, Ella Irwin. And Elon says, I made it a top priority immediately, Jack, loser. At the same time, Ned was spending millions of dollars on warrior seats. Super messed up priorities. Unbelievable. So, Jack, no, your organization was actually not doing anything on this. Going to Warriors games. Didn't even allow hiring. Jack says, well, I don't know what happened in the past year, but to say we didn't take action for years isn't true. You can make all my emails public to verify. Company took away my access to email, or I would. Cerno says, okay, look here, Jack. Elon is making a directionally true claim on how the Twitter Stasi spent its time going after the Babylon Bee, libs of TikTok, not as much on protecting kids. If that perception is false, Jack, Yoel and Vijaya's calendars would refute that. What did they do all week when they weren't chatting in Slack channels about Trump hurting their fifis? Good question from Cernovich. Yoel was having panic attacks about Trump tweets and libs. That's been confirmed by him. Is there evidence that he made CSAM takedowns a priority? That's how grave of a discussion this is. That's the gravamen of his discussion. How were the resources allocated? And I think Elon responded. Yeah. All right. So that's Elon. Let's go back over to Taibbi and see if he's got anything new for us. In 57, he said the firm's executives on day one tried to pay lip service to the rules, but then it became only what they said went. So he's out of order here. 57 goes to 56. When panic first breaks out on January 6th, there's a fair share of WTF-type posts mixed in with frantic calls for Twitter to start deploying its full arsenal of moderation tools. Quote, what's the right remediation? Do we interstitial the video? Asked one employee in despair. Conlon is here. Graphic violence tweet shared. In this case, this media hasn't been flagged to safety yet. A video of a person is being shot on Capitol Hill. In this case, the media hasn't flagged it yet. What is the right remediation here? Do we interstitial the video? CC. This freedom or death tweet from Stop the Steal Gadfly Mike Cowdery elicits heated reaction. He said, today is one of the most important days in our nation's history. We cannot allow a global hegemony to take over this country. What happens today determines the next 100 years, freedom or death. So that gets posted. And they are upset about this. Roth groans about Cowdery. He says, "This asshole," and then he posts the tweet. Very nice, unbiased moderator. Somebody in purple responds, "Oh God," like high school children. Yoel says, "He is on his last strike for 3 different policies. If this constitutes incitement, I will PS him." Throw him off the platform too. At 2:39, a comms official asked Roth to confirm or deny a story that they'd restricted Trump's ability to tweet. Roth says, "We have not." We have Light Pink who says, "Hi, Yoel. Appreciate all your hard work today. We've heard from a reporter that they have a trusted source telling them that we've restricted Trump's ability to tweet. Is that true? Sorry for this annoying request, but we wanted to chase it down with you before we started an email chain." Ross says, "We have not. Haven't seen anything yet." 60 minutes later, Roth executed the historic act of bouncing Trump, i.e. putting him in timeout. Quote says, "I hope you are appropriately corpsec'd," says a colleague. Here is what the thread looks like. Yoel is probably just on Trump's Twitter account all day, right? Just waiting for the opportunity to do something about it. He shares a tweet, Donald Trump's status. Yoel Roth says, "Label, please." Put a label on it. Conlon says, "Done." Shares an image. Purple says, "Is it done?" Conlon says, "Yeah, looks like it's now bounced." Okay, bouncing meaning you're in timeout now. Timeout for the president. Purple says, "It's the right decision, Yoel. I hope you, Dell, and others are appropriately corpsec'd." And here it continues. This theme of the policy perhaps being stressed by queries from comms executives who themselves have to answer the public's questions occasionally appears. 2 days later, you see chatter about pulling comms out of the loop. Green says, "We're already getting questions about conspiracy theories in our enforcement process all the time. Not a wait and see thing." Laura Culbertson says, "Let's talk about that, but we need to hammer that out ahead of an emergency and an evolving situation." Green says, "Respectfully, it needs to be your team doing so holistically." Lauren says, "I don't think it's wise to reach out to comms folks proactively on this." Comms is being escorted out of the loop. The first company-wide email comes out from Gotti on January 6th. It announced that 3 Trump tweets had been bounced, but more importantly, signaled a determination to use legit violations as a guide for any possible permanent suspension. Here's the email from Vijaya, dropped in the chat. "Hi team, an update on actions we're taking as a result of what's happening in DC today. We have removed, bounced 3 tweets from Donald Trump on J6 2020 for making unfounded claims of voter fraud and election theft, which must be viewed in the context of violence in Washington, D.C. today, and reasonably can be expected to continue to incite and inspire violent acts around the country. We are requiring a 12-hour timeout following the removal of these tweets. We have also tweeted so there's transparency in our actions, and making it clear that future violations of the Twitter rules will result in permanent suspension." And she's sharing the tweet from Twitter Safety. "Thanks, Vijaya." So that is all now public, right? And I think we saw all of that when Donald Trump started to get in trouble. And they stood by that for a pretty serious amount of time. All right, so Matt Taibbi is still going today. And I thought that he was saying that we were not going to talk about January 6th today, but evidently we're going into some of that conversation. So let's go back over to Elon, see what else he's getting into today. This was the response from Ella Irwin. So Elon, right, he already told us previously that this person, Ella Irwin, was appointed to take action on the CSAM material. And Jack says that's false. But Ella Irwin, who actually came in and took over, she says, sorry, Jack. You know, I wish this was false, but my experience this year supports this. I fought hard to get funding to replace the people working on this who left in early 2022, and I was told no. At one point, there were 0 engineers and very few employees working on CSE, which is child exploitation, and still no funding. Sorry, Jack. Amazing that they spent all of this effort on shutting Trump up and shutting conservatives and Republicans up, but they didn't even have a single engineer on any of this. Wow. So Kathy Wood is also dumping on the Fed. Are they raising rates next week? Holy moly. Amazing. They probably will. All right. So you see more from Elon. Doge designer. How long do you think the recession is going to last? Just a rough guess, but things probably start looking better in Q2 2024. Wow. Okay, so he's writing off the next 18 months. Cool. From Elon. Sour Patch says, hey, just FYI, you know that weird lady who just resigned because she didn't do any good work on anything? This lady here, Leslie Podesta, who said that we cannot trust Twitter anymore because Elon's in charge. Remember her? Remember that name sounds kind of interesting and familiar? Yeah, it turns out that she's John Podesta's niece. Amazing. A Democrat deputy chief of staff. Wow, outstanding. So John Podesta's niece was working on the Twitter trust and safety team, evidently investigating children or protecting children, working on protecting children. And they didn't do that at all. And John Podesta's, brother has very interesting connections there as well. Very curious. Very, very curious. Elton John's leaving Twitter. Elton John says, all my life, I've tried to use music to bring people together. Yet it saddens me to see how misinformation is now being used to divide our world. Well, I've decided to no longer use Twitter given their recent change in policy, which will allow misinformation to flourish unchecked. LOL. From Elton John. He's unhappy here. Yeah. Niche Gamer says, it's probably another newly minted Marxist social media person with brain damage that posted this. Elton likely has nothing to do with what's posted on here. Elon says, yeah, it's true. Most celebrities don't write their own posts. More should. Way better to hear directly from them. And I think Elon responded to this too. He says, hey, Elton, I love your music. I love it. I hope you come back. And is there any misinformation in particular that you're concerned about? We can talk about it. Any response from Elon or from Elton? No, of course not. Because it's just a stupid virtue signaling statement. That's it, right? It's not actually intended to facilitate a conversation about anything. Yeah. And maybe it's because, they're doing something on some of this material being removed. I don't know. All right. So let's go back over to Matt Taibbi and see what else he's got for us. 61, he talks about Trump getting bounced. Safe to say that Trump's go home with love and in peace tweet didn't go over well at Twitter HQ. Trump posted this on J6, 1501 hours. Said these are the things and events that happen. Go home with love and in peace and remember this day forever. So Patrick is very upset as soon as that tweet drops. Very upset. Conlon, the long con, says, what the actual F? J6. Can this go to staff too? Conlon says, I'm labeling this right now. He's freaked out about this. Ross says, yes, label it. And Conlon says, sorry, I actually got emotionally angry seeing that. Turns out I'm not a full robot. Who knew? Oh, he says here, it's gut-wrenching. He's a horrible human being, somebody says in blue. Very upset about it. Very emotional over there. Yeah, okay. So how bad of a person Trump is, got all of that. And they're all just having a little hissy fit inside of Twitter. And so these posts continue to drop. And we'll hang out for a little bit more before we have to wrap it up, my friends. But we'll see if I don't know how long Taibbi is going, but we've got to wrap up in about a few minutes. So we'll just hang out for a little bit longer and see. But it's pretty shocking, I would say. The entire story is just about the internal censorship operations, and they were quite robust. They were incredibly one-sided, and they were making it up as they go along. A last few notes about J6 come from Taibbi. He says Roth at one point looked and found Trump had a slew of duplicate bot applications. Yul shared this. He says, seeing a ton of duplicate enrollments on Trump. And can we see any details on this image? Yeah, a little bit. It's blurry. But we see action, type action, details. Yeah, you can see a lot of these. Okay, so bot, tweet ID, abuse policy, election interference, bounce. Result, bounced. Election interference, bounced. So same one, right? All of these are election interference bounces. But there were bots that were associated and assigned to each one of these. Yeah, it's very blurry. My head is hurting just even trying to look at it. But all right, so that's what's going on from Yul Roth. So duplicate enrollments, they have him just botted out the wazoo. And yeah, he's still dropping stuff. All right, and so we'll see how much further he goes. Back over to Taibbi, he says, by the end of the first day, the execs are still trying to apply which rules. By the next day, they will contemplate a major change in approach. Watch Schellenberger this weekend for the play-by-play of how all that went down. And by January 8th, which Bari Weiss will describe on Sunday. Oh, that's it. So I got the dates wrong. So he did a 6th, 7th, and 8th. 8th was the removal of Trump. So I got confused on the dates. So tomorrow will be Schellenberger. Make sure you're following him. For Sunday, we'll have the 8th. Bari Weiss will describe it. Twitter will be receiving plaudits from our partners in Washington. And the sitting president will no longer be heard on the platform. So that looks like it is nearing the end of the entire new tweet thread. But that, my friends, is it for us on the day.